With the fall of Antioch, and as we had all these other major threats around the kingdom, something had to be done, and fast. Diomedes was worth nothing hiding at sea and couldn't return to the conflict before replenishing his army for a bit. All the way up in Armenia, we were working on forming a new army to help withstand the Macedonian offensive in Mesopotamia. But our armies were too scattered to make any progress. So we turned to diplomacy, which I have both tried and failed doing in every war I have ever been in throughout this campaign. And surprisingly actually, this time we actually were successful. The Nationalists agreed to stand down. Thank Athena for letting them see reason. The same was actually also done with the nomads, although it only lasted like a turn or two. But this short time of peace convinced me to redeploy our North Point army, which had basically become our equivalent to the Night's Watch or something. As this army was so used to traversing the massive steppes, their movement range had become so insane they could travel from one side of our kingdom to the other in just 4 turns, leaving the other reinforcements from Area in the dirt. Utter insanity, that is. Furthermore, with this newfound peace, we established a new fleet in Kyrene to help contest the shores. And also, while now that we are talking about the sea, we also transported our major army back from Salamis over to the mainland, where they were supposed to fortify Demetrius, the next bastion in the Macedonian warpath. This led to me making a third or possibly even 4th attempt, depending on how you see it, at raiding Amisata. But like every other time I had tried this, the Macedonians were in position to absolutely slaughter our army. Europus and also Sugma fell soon after that. But even though the Macedonians were on the offensive, it was around this time the balance shifted. The Macedonian outpost they created in Egypt fell to a rebellion, leading to their navy sailing towards Kyrene. This basically meant our minor legion of levies hired a bunch of mercenaries to retake the port, securing the south again. Regarding Syria and Anatolia, I had honestly no clue on how to handle these overwhelming armies. Like, look at this. I only had one plan-ish, which was to blockade Antioch and hope they would make a foolish move to break past our fleets or something. Basically, we had to take whatever opportunity we could, such as this minor one at Europus. But believe it or not, the real breakthrough was actually at Amisata, the city where we've lost so many armies. After our scout uncovered that just a single Macedonian army defended the town, and as we had 2 fully formed armies in position to strike, we risked basically all our defending armies in Armenia for this single offensive. And oh, look at this, the battles are back. Quite fitting, as this was the exact same maneuver the Macedonians used to take down our own faction leader at this very same town actually. It is time for revenge. Our ballistae hammered their contingents with giant rocks, while our newly acquired Cretan archers picked off any hostile cavalry getting a tiny bit too close to our formation. Their elite companion cavalry clearly outclassed our thorax units that we adopted from the Seleucids. However, they dominated any ground engagement they were in. It was pure pike-on-pike action, with the Macedonians slowly outclassing us on that front. It would even have led to a defeat if not for the cataphract cavalry that made it in behind their lines to secure the battle. It was an absolutely decisive victory, with us getting a major breakthrough in the north and with the Macedonians being unable to respond. And also as North Point arrived, we began closing in from the south as well. Our newly established fleet from Kyrene, which had finally reached full strength, adopted this wedge formation to ram through the Macedonian fleet that harassed our southern shore. It was magnificent to watch. Up in Armenia, we continued our advance with us smashing another major Macedonian army without any additional hostile armies to save it. Divide and conquer, I say. Equally as important was the decision to pick when or where to fight. This specific battle here was declined, not wanting to be outnumbered, leaving Phoeniki completely vulnerable. But this one further north was obligated, as it was against over 10,000 Macedonians. Except it didn't quite feel like it, as we chose not to control the large armies in this specific battle here. A trick I learned from my good friend Samari. Furthermore, he also taught me this neat trick where you burn down one part of your fortification, encouraging your enemies to only attack from that direction. Quite clever actually, if not for the fact that this completely backfired on us. Not only did the Macedonians focus down our pikemen with their skirmishers, breaking the only reason this tactic was actually viable to us, but also as our own units routed, they constantly got replaced by inferior garrison units from the useless town, rather than the actual army that also was in reinforcement range. Basically, our entire front line broke without getting replaced, forcing us to retreat. We lost basically another army here, and I can only imagine that they didn't follow through with the attack to finish us off, as we actually ended up killing all their 3 commanders. Sometimes we just gotta be lucky, I guess. After that, the Macedonians chose to somewhat divide their forces, allowing us to take down 2 more of their armies before falling back to replenish and recruit new units. Berenike was reinforced by our 2 fleets, and Sukma was recaptured as well. Amazing. Just like the fact that Macedon occupied Salamis. It's okay though, we just had to blast our way through the Macedonian fortification, with the Agama pikemen getting absolutely crushed by our Cretan archers. The Agama pikemen might be the best close combat unit in the entire game, but they ain't got nothing on our archers. A crushing victory. This was then followed up with the navy doing its thing and North Point smashing another army just to take control of Antioch afterwards. What seemed to have been an absolutely impossible task for a few turns ago had just completely dissolved by us taking risks, going for small opportunities and getting a bit lucky. Another hostile army was defeated outside the walls of Demetrius, which was a delight to our plans. Basically, this left just one enemy army within our own lands, which we both engaged and defeated at this amazing river crossing. Beautiful scenes indeed. After this, we took a few turns to lick our wounds and regroup before the final push. But before we continue with that, I would like to mention what I have neglected the most throughout this story here, namely the economic aspect and how we finance our armies. Basically, as a consequence of our constant state of warfare, we hadn't really been able to develop any proper economic provinces apart from Bactria or Sogdia, which only helped for the size of our entire army that we had back then. But as we progressively gained control of Egypt, Mesopotamia and inevitably Syria, we began investing into exporting agricultural products such as grain and livestock from these specific provinces. And as we developed these provinces more and more, they eventually sustained the entire economy of everything in our kingdom. Quite impressive, I must say. This was additionally followed up by the fact that every new level our different characters got, both commanders, governors and agents and all that, they would receive a skill that would help lower empire maintenance. It got so out of hand that we eventually actually got empire maintenance down to below 10%. Absolutely insanity. This was basically what funded all of our armies that were about to push into Anatolia. The first strike came here, where one of the Macedonian armies approached to the right of our formation. If only their royal pelters could do anything against our bronze shield pikes though. It turned out to be quite a mess for battle, but so be it. Scrappy fights are part of warfare. The victorious armies marched deeper into Anatolia while the North Point Legion would clean up the coastline. This victory of ours seemed to have smashed some sense into the Macedonians. A bit too late in my opinion though. The next turn was quite eventful. First of all, we took Side, which was the last settlement loyal to the Seleucids, leaving just a few loyal ships to sail around the Mediterranean. Second, we declared war upon Karana, a Macedonian favoring state. If we left them while we pushed west, they'll just backstab us. No chance we'll let such a thing happen. Besides, they were pretty much a walkover just like the remaining Macedonian armies, meaning we could lay siege to Massacre. They inevitably chose to sally out, where our overwhelming numbers of phalanxes led to us just forming a straight line for the Cappadocians to run directly into, while our own cavalry and flanking infantry cleaned up the flanks and rear. After that kinda easy victory, we made contact with the Black Sea, and while doing so, eliminating yet another Macedonian ally. We also reached a new Imperium ranking by doing so, which basically only led to us establishing governors in our new agricultural provinces I mentioned earlier. It also led to us falling out with the Romans and them cancelling all our treaties. But no sign of aggression actually. Just like we wanted, as we had plenty of that ourselves, charged at the Macedonians and their allies. At lightning speed we blitzed through their lands with our spies giving us intel to plan a siege of Ankara. However, after losing basically all of their armies in Armenia and the Levant, the Macedonians actually managed to scrap together one final army, with the hopes of potentially slowing down our offensive. Rain was pouring down with Zeus watching the final battle between the last two Diadochi. Our slingers used their range to take down the Macedonian javelin cavalry, forcing this battle to become a contest between the red-caped Agame pikemen and our bronze shield pike. Out on the left, our thorax units chased and inevitably caught the Phrygian units deployed out there. Our own Babylonian mercenaries used their larger shields to dodge the Macedonian pikes, getting close into striking distance. It was a pure bloodbath, with both sides losing dozens of brave warriors. But in the end, our cavalry came in clutch, deciding the outcome. The rest of Anatolia fell without much of a contest, meaning the Macedonians had lost everything east of the Aegean. Oh, I might actually have forgotten something. How annoying the nomads actually have been throughout this fucking conflict. I think it's only fitting we showed them how fun it is to be invaded. The only real resistance they showed was a minor navy assisted by the Macedonians. But as you might have guessed, we straight up outclassed them on that front. Our ships that were way smaller than the ones sailing around in the Mediterranean just pinned down the barbarians to then finish the battle that way. I would later find out our rather swift campaign into the steppes was because the nomads had most of their hordes in Dacia, where they made fat stacks pillaging the barbarian tribes living there. But before we actually knew better, the steppes were secured, meaning all we had to do was retake our ancestral capital. A mission that began with the invasion of Athens, and then afterwards with our two finest legions marching through Thrace. It ended up being the invasion force that landed in Athens that received the honor of securing the birthplace of Alexander, and thus bringing an end to our constant struggle for survival.